Okay, Google.
Hi Shoham.
What's my schedule for today?
You have the new tomorrow opening ceremony, together with Chemi Perez starting in 2 minutes.
Hey Siri,
Hi Chemi.
please establish a connection with Shoham Nicolet.
I'm sorry, but our server is in downtime right now.
What do you mean?
Please try later.
Please use Skype.
I forgot your Skype password.
What? Okay, please use Hangouts.
I don't work with Google.
Siri! Seriously?
I'm going to eat lunch. Goodbye.
Big questions now is which habits will stay from period 1 to period 2, which one will have resistance to change, and which one will expand.
Dan,
For example, coffee shops.
I need your help.
Chemi, we're in the middle of a lecture. We're talking about human habits. Can we talk later?
What habits?
Okay. So what habits will remain and which one would expand?
Dan, listen, it's
And what would be
important.
the
I need your
condition
help.
that would allow us to go back to parks, for example? Chemi.
I'm trying to reach Shoham in LA to start the summit, but,
excuse me,
but the Zoom
I'll
doesn't
get back
work.
to you in a few minutes. Let me deal with this, and I'll be back right very, very soon. Okay, Chemi, did you try to restart your computer? What about the VPN?
VPN?
Try maybe to disable the VPN.
VPN?
Did you pay? Did you pay for Zoom? Oh, come on, just pay for it.
What do you mean pay to you?
What else? What else can you do? Wait 1 minute. Adi is calling.
Hey guys, did you succeed reaching Shoham?
I don't know what to do.
How fast is your internet?
What about the remote?
What remote? Cable remote?
Alright, did you try the cables?
What cable? What are you talking about? Are you talking about this cable? This one?
Exactly, this one, Chemi.
It could be that somebody is blocking you. You know, it could be that the people on the other side, you know, there's a function in Zoom that you can just block people that you don't want to talk to.
Who is blocking me? You are blocking? Are you blocking to me? Are you talking to me? Dan?
What about the router?
It doesn't work.
Maybe try to connect from your phone instead of the laptop, or if you have a tablet or an iPad or something like that.
Who else do we know in the Bay Area?
Yasmin, maybe. Wait a minute, I'm gonna try to call her.
Hi, Adi.
Yasmin, you must help me with the guys. It's such a big mess. We're trying to reach Shoham Nicolet. Can you help us?
Don't worry, it's always like that with them. Give me 1 sec. Shoham just uploaded an Instagram story a few moments ago. Let's check it out. Oops, sorry.
Maybe the ID number is wrong. Maybe try to change the last digit at the end, like 1 up, 1 down.
1 up, 1 down,
Digit up.
7,
No, 4.
4, 1.
יסמין, עדי. היי, גם חמי. מה, אני צריך לדבר אנגלית על הבוקר? What are you doing here?
We're getting ready for the summit.
What summit you are talking about? Can I join?
9-2. Can you please connect us to Shoham Nicolet, IAC?
Hi all. Good to see you all together here. You're almost late. Are you ready to start?
Now I'm ready for the summit. Come on, hit me.
Great.
everyone, my name is Netta Riskin. I'm honored to host day one of this unique virtual summit. Wherever you are around the world, in Israel or in either coast of the United States, thank you for joining us today. This unique 4-day event will bring together world-renowned Israeli and American thought leaders for a series of engaging discussions on our new reality in the wake of the coronavirus. We will view the pandemic and its vast consequences through the lens of the economy, innovation, medical breakthroughs, and social adaptability. The Israeli-American Council and the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation are proud to welcome all of you to our IAC-PC Global East Summit, the new tomorrow.
Hello everyone and welcome to the New Tomorrow Global E-Conference. While we in Israel are emerging cautiously from our fight against the coronavirus, many of you remain at the peak of your response. I wish you all good health and thank you for joining me in what promises to be an enlightening conversation of how we will begin to move forward as a global society in the wake of this unprecedented event. The COVID-19 crisis has strengthened even further the fundamental values on which the activities of the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation are based: partnership, cooperation, and shared responsibility for our collective future. While an increasingly globalized world has led to significant opportunities, it has also opened the door to new challenges and threats which know no borders and do not distinguish between nationality, race, or gender. It is even clearer today that we are at the end of an era in which countries are fighting each other for singular control over land and resources and are transitioning into an era of worldwide opportunity and cooperation through which we promote prosperity while also dealing with global threats. This transition means we will need to cooperate on a global level, sharing knowledge, research, and methodologies of ways to tackle new challenges. We at the Paris Center firmly believe that by harnessing innovation and the creative spirit of entrepreneurship, we can actively take our fate into our own hands and work together not only to answer the needs of our own societies, but to create a better world for all. 21st century connectivity has enabled Israel to transition from being an isolated island to a ship sailing on the open seas, charting new courses that link Israel to the world. We had the opportunity to deepen these linkages even further during the COVID-19 crisis, which showed us all that the world is even smaller than we thought. As a matter of fact, it's just a Zoom call away. Today, in these uncertain times, when we are all preparing for a new normal in the shadow of the coronavirus pandemic, we wanted to create a platform which would enable us to facilitate global cooperation and knowledge exchange. We are proud to bring you some of the best and brightest of Israeli and international minds to shed some light on what is to come and to explore together how Israeli innovation can assist the world in coping with a new global reality. I want to thank IAC and specifically Shoham for this important partnership, which has enabled us to continue to serve as a bridge between Israeli innovation and the international community. Oh, and most importantly, once the crisis is behind us and we are safe to travel, we would love to welcome you to the Peres Center for Peace and Innovation, situated in the seashore of Tel Aviv Jaffa. We look forward to welcome you.
Shalom, ברוכים הבאים. Welcome everyone. We live in a time of crisis. This is a unique crisis. And as churches said, let's not let a crisis go to waste. This is a time of great opportunity and to think much bigger than we used to. Beyond technological innovation, the biggest change, or maybe even an accelerated evolution, is within us, the people. We now understand the endless opportunities when we come together across continents to share ideas and to inspire each other, to bring together almost overnight the best and brightest into one place so they can make an impact on the lives of thousands. This is a time where we can make remarkable education accessible and affordable to anyone. This is a time where we can reimagine collaboration and working together as one community for those who live in Israel and the United States or all over the world. A community that strives to build and innovate. A community that understands that working together we can achieve great things. A community that has Israel at its heart and Israeli innovation and entrepreneurship in spirit. As Shimon Peres wrote, there is no room for small dreams. And on behalf of the IAC, I would like to thank the Peres Center and Chemi Peres and to the many other bright minds and trailblazers that join us in the next 4 days to share their wisdom and experience that will make us all and the world a better place. More than anything, it is our time to connect to each other, Israelis and Americans, looking beyond the horizons and not only trying to imagine the new tomorrow, but also use this window of opportunity and work together to shape it today. Toda.
Thank you, Chemi and Shoham. Let's take a quick look at our summit schedule and the sessions we have in store. The only way to get the fully summit experience is through the networking tool or our app, which you're currently seeing displayed on screen. Press any of the links in the description or download IAC Summits from your app store now and join us virtually. If you haven't registered yet, enter your email and use the code CONNECT2020. Our next segment is a session dedicated to the unusual circumstances we're all facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. How has our life changed as a result? What will the new normal look like once we flatten the curve? Welcome to the new tomorrow. Accept, adapt, switch. Please welcome our host Michal Divon and our panel Ariely and Professor Yoram.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new tomorrow, Accept, Adapt, and Switch. If anyone thought about the meaning of New Tomorrow a few months ago, it would have had an entirely different meaning than what it has today. We are more interconnected than ever with this new reality we were forced into. And to help us understand what it is we have experienced collectively and individually in the past 3 months, I am pleased to introduce our incredible experts, 2 individuals who have dedicated their lives to understanding the human psyche. With us today are Professor Yoram Yovell, a highly respected psychiatrist, brain researcher, psychoanalyst, TV presenter, author, and international keynote speaker. Many of you know him from his primetime show, Sichat Nefesh, Heart to Heart Talk, which he hosted for 10 years, an award-winning interview program on Israeli TV where he interviewed politicians, writers, and artists about the relationship between their lives and their work. Yovell is also a best-selling author. His books deal with how science may account for some of the puzzling, seemingly illogical workings of human mind. Brainstorm, published in 2001, and What is Love, published in 2004. I'm also delighted to introduce Dan Ariely, a James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. Professor Ariely is a founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight, co-creator of the documentary film Dishonesty, The Truth About Lies.
Wait. You didn't give it enough pause, please. The Center for Advanced Hindsight. That's a funny name. You need to stop after that. I'm joking. Go ahead.
Professor Ariely is a founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight.
Very good.
Pause. Co-creator of the documentary film Dishonesty, The Truth About Lies, and a 3-time New York Times best-selling author. His books include Predictability, Irrational, The Upside of Irrationality, interesting, The Honest Truth About Dishonesty, Irrationally Yours, and Payoff. And in 2013, Bloomberg recognized Dan as one of the top 50 most influential thinkers. He also has a bi-weekly advice column in the Wall Street Journal called Ask Ariely. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you here with us.
Lovely to be here.
Likewise.
I'll start with a question that I'm going to direct to both of you. And I'd like to know, let's kind of set the tone. How would you describe what we all just went through and are still going through, some of us, maybe in Israel a little less, both collectively and personally, from a psychological and mental standpoint? Professor Ariely, let's begin with you. I know you've been studying the ramifications of COVID-19 and conducting quite extensive research.
First of all, thank you. I didn't mean to throw you off. So maybe as a quick introduction, I'll just say that I'm a part of a small company that works with the government here in Israel. And during the COVID-19 period, we were involved in many things. We were involved in how to give instructions in a way that people could understand and follow. How do we think about the education school? What do we do with prisoners? What do we do with domestic violence? How do we put money back into the economy? How do we get mayors to collaborate? So lots of things. But if we ask about the psychology of this event, it's actually a very, very complex event with lots of things going on. I think there's lots of questions about trust between individuals and the government. I think there are questions about what's called public good. How do we think and act collectively? And of course, there's the aspect of stress. And then the economy and so on. So just to focus on one of them, maybe I'll say something about collective good. And there are other aspects, of course. If you think about something like taxes, taxes are collective good. So if 10% of the people don't pay their taxes, that's a bad thing, and we have 10% less tax. In COVID-19, if 10% of the people don't adhere to the instructions and they run around, it's not just 10% less, it can ruin it for everybody. If we try to do some kind of distancing and 10% of the people don't adhere, much of the distances is useless. And then if you think about it, what it means is that if we work together as a country, then everybody gets to benefit. And if we don't, even a small minority can destroy it for everybody. And we started this period with a very high collective action. Not perfect, and we had some challenges with minorities, but we did very well with collective action. That collective action has stopped. Very sadly, if you look at what's happening in the last few days, it's true that the numbers are going down, but my fear is that this sense of commitment to the collective good has gone down, and the commitment to a collective good is things like wearing masks, right? When you do it for other people more than yourself, and I'm very, very proud of the collective action we had early on. It's really kind of amazing and heartwarming. I'm a little worried about the reduction over time, and of course it links to trust and other things. So that's the beginning comment.
So collective action that dwindles once the crisis is over, or at least seems to be over.
I think the dwindling actually started when Netanyahu and Rivlin violated social distancing or distancing. So it wasn't the objective reality of where the distance was. It was about trust, and it was also about some anger about the way the economy was opening.
Interesting, which we saw here in the States as well, when you saw leaders who weren't practicing what different governors and the administration were preaching. That definitely created that sense of distrust. Yoram, how would you see these 3 months, what it means, where we're at, summarize the craziness?
Yeah. So first of all, I think perfect hindsight is indeed always perfect. So I think it's much easier to talk about things from right now. I agree with everything that Dan said. I think the question about is this a trauma and are we traumatized? I would say the answer is yes. I think that all the variables, both on a national level here in Israel as well as in the US, and the personal responses of most people, what you see in the media and social networks, yes, we have been traumatized. But I would say that this is a special form of trauma, something that we have not experienced before. And I think fear of the unexpected or concern about the unexpected can put you off guard for a long time, and as things are changing. So I think for all of us, this has been travel through uncharted territory. And then issues of social cohesiveness and trust, as Dan said, play paramount importance in both the adherence to the government's instructions and in terms of the national morale, how people respond. Do people feel protected and taken care of? Do they feel like the burden is evenly distributed? Do they feel like the right people are making the right decisions, etc.? One caveat about looking back is that the models that we have in psychology and psychiatry about looking at those events on a personal level, and then we infer from that on a national level, is the syndrome known as post-traumatic stress disorder. But that syndrome implies that there has been a trauma and now it's over, and we keep returning back to what has been traumatized, what happened to us before. And I think the difference here, and I think you feel it in the States as well, is that this is not post-trauma. This is trauma. We're still in it, and we're not. It's not like World War II, if you will, of the Vietnam War was traumatic. But now the war is over, and some people, most people, just carry on. And then there's a group of people who keep going back. I think that here we're still in the midst of it, and it's going to take quite some time until it's over. As Dan said, the ramifications are everywhere, from advanced technology like the software that we're using to make this very conference possible, and their distribution, to the rise of food, food delivery all over from restaurants that can't be opened, all the way to scientific discoveries, transportation, you name it. The economy, of course, and what it did to people. So I think I'd like to concentrate on it's still broad as it is, the psychology of what has been going on. And I would agree with Dan that a very critical issue is the issue of trust. And I will also add to it the issue of fear. I think that with the rationale that here lack of adherence to the social distancing regulations by even a small minority of the population could set off a chain reaction and prevent adequate control of the pandemic. I think that we've been systematically and persistently frightened by ominous statements by politicians, by officials, not so much, I have to say, by practicing physicians, but people who've been officials in the Ministry of Health here. And I think in the States too, the music from the White House went from absolute lackadaisical, there's nothing in it, it's just a little bit of flu, what's the big deal, to we're in this national crisis, it's terrible, I don't know how to stop it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that there's an upside and a downside to scaring people so much.
Sure, and there was definitely a lot of criticism where that came from. Now, you mentioned fear, and fear being enhanced when there's something unexpected, like the pandemic that we're experiencing still. Dan Ariely, in one of your webinars, you said that every time we experience something and don't encounter a negative outcome, then we're getting the wrong impression that it's safer than what we thought it was, which kind of pertains to what Yoram was saying. So I'm guessing you were, of course, referring to the pandemic. And do you think this is a human trait, or is this something we can somehow maneuver?
Yeah, so both. Before I move to your question, I want to add one small thing to Yoram. It turns out that people have a tremendous amount of resilience. But one of the things that helps with resilience is knowing what is going to happen, right? If you tell me you're going to get a shock, and then you might get fired, and then there'll be 3 weeks, and we have a plan, we can suffer the pain. Not knowing creates what we call learned helplessness, makes things very, very hard to control. And again, it's not about the absolute level of pain, it's about not knowing where bad things are happening. And that's really, really tough. If you walk around the world and bad things are happening to you without you knowing, that's a very, very tough. It's also
not knowing, or are you talking about information not being properly conveyed, or maybe both?
Not expecting. I would say
That's
not
right.
expecting, not anticipating,
Yeah, and it could come from we don't really know, and it could come because of not being conveyed. So if I tell you, Michal, I'll tell you tomorrow what the plan is, and tomorrow I say, I'll tell you tomorrow what it is, that's very different than say, I have a plan for the next 2 weeks, we might change it, but here is how it's going. So there are different types of stress. By the way, this kind of stress, that not knowing, also has a bad effect on the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's one thing. So it's stress and fear and trauma, and the not knowing where it's coming from is adding to that. Now, in terms of your question, kind of one of the ways that we learn is by experience and not from description. There's an amazing amount of work on this by Ido Erev, a professor in the Technion. And think about something like texting and driving. If you remember the old days, when you text and drive, let's say you think the probability of texting and driving and something bad happen is 1%. So one day you do it, and nothing bad happened, the probability is 1%. In your mind, you change the probability. You say, oh, nothing happened. Maybe it's 0.75%. And then you do it again and again and again. Low probability events, when we engage in them, we learn the wrong lesson. Now, what's happening with COVID-19. If you think about period 1, closure, high level of fear and a certain level of risk, but the fear is higher than the risk. And then the disease is going down. And some people would adjust and some people would stay. But the fear the question is, what will get the fear to go down as well? And the same thing we mentioned with the feedback from texting and driving is going to help here. So imagine two people. Imagine one person who says, okay, they tell us that we can go out, but I'm going to wait another month. Versus imagine another person that says, I'm going to go out just a little bit. The person that will go out a little bit would go out, nothing bad will happen to them. The probability is very low in the second period. Odds are that nothing bad will happen. And they'll say, no, it's not so bad. So for example, my research lab at Duke, my plan is to ask people to show back up to work, but even for 1 hour a day. Like you could say, oh, let's let people stay at home if they're stressed, but that stress will not go down.
But then the question is, how do you maintain the same behavior? Lower the stress, but maintain the responsible behavior.
Yeah, and that needs to come from social cohesion and caring about others. So for example, we still have a tremendous stress, a pressure to shake people's hands. Like if we met and I would come to you with my hand out, you would have a very hard time not shaking my hand, right? You could give me an elbow. Like the elbow is helpful because you show an action, but otherwise, if you did that, please don't. It would be really tough, right? It's so aggressive. If I came for a hug, actually, we should do some experiments on this and see how people react. But I think that keeping it, we need experience, and we need to create a new norm for a while. We need to do reminders about washing hands. We need all kinds of tricks, but we do need them. The reality is that in Israel right now, numbers are very low. Distancing, mask, washing hands, it looks like we're fine, right? But of course, no large gatherings. That's a dangerous thing. But if we want society to come back to normal, we have to go out. Now, one other point is that one of the things that we're recommending now to cities around Israel is to create institutions for this Corona period 2, we call it. Corona period 1, we were locked. Corona period 2, we're trying to get out. So what are the odds that I will go right now to a very busy coffee shop or restaurant? Very, very low. So we're asking mayors to allow restaurants to expand from the restaurant to the sidewalk and even to take a few parking spots. Because if the distance is very high, there's a chance people would sit. Big distance. But if they'll do it 2 or 3 times for 2 or 3 weeks, then we could, go back from the sidewalk into it. We need the experience that would teach us that things are safe. And for some things, it will be easier, like supermarkets and coffee shops. For some things like movie theaters, it's going to be much more complex.
Although you are seeing, at least I know here at Central Park, people aren't maintaining social distancing and it's not scaring people away. There are certain parks that have kind of created different pods for people to know where they can sit and where is safe and to utilize the space. But it's interesting that you're actually looking at people's fears rather than the limitations that need to be at hand. But Yoram, I saw an interview of yours on Channel 12 where you're talking about people's stress level and how pretty much people have had many questions, and understanding the stress is kind of the first way to deal with it. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, but also tell us how come in Israel, where things are starting to open up, it seems like a lot of people very quickly forgot that COVID even happened. Like, is this our mind playing tricks on us?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think there are 2 issues here. I think one is what Dan has been talking about, which is how do you desensitize people to something that was very frightening beforehand? How do you get them to go past their anxieties about it? But the other one is the issue of trust. I would agree with Dan that the trust of the population here in the authorities, in the Ministry of Health, certainly, has been violated. People feel like they've been scared, that there were cries of wolf, wolf. The sky's falling, the sky's falling. And for the vast majority of the people, nothing bad happened. And I think that there's a reaction to that. Once people feel like they've been fooled or they've been frightened by something that really isn't so scary, or even worse, if they suspect an ulterior motive, to those scares, then they're going to rebound. Then they'll say, "Oh yeah, well let's do that." I also think that the forces that draw us together, like shaking hands, like hugging, like gathering together, congregations congregate, and societies socialize. People get together. That's what we're about. We're strongly wired to do that. So I think the prohibitions against that would be temporary. And again, I think it's very much an issue of people following instructions if they feel like the norms are just that the instructions have been rational. And I think the issue of trust is really paramount there, because I'll give an example from something that anyone who's a practitioner or a clinician doesn't like. The issue of malpractice. When do people sue their caregivers, their caretakers? It's not when they've made a mistake. I think people can be very forgiving if they feel like their doctor has made a mistake, but the doctor did their best, and at the time they made the right decisions, what would appear to be the right decisions, but there was a bad outcome, or even that the doctor tried very hard, that they did their best. People would tend to be very forgiving. The point where people sue their caregivers is when they feel like the doctor's been negligent, or worse, arrogant, or dismissing some concerns that were raised. That's when they get vindictive.
There's also some results.
Yeah.
There's also some result to support Yoram's statement that when physicians apologize for the mistakes, lawsuits go down. And it's kind of interesting because lawyers never want the doctor to admit, right? Yeah. Let's say a physician made a mistake. The lawyer said, never admit the mistake. It's bad for court, yes? But it has a higher probability of not getting there.
I think that pertains to many different industries.
Oh yeah. And for those of us who are old enough to remember love story, love means never having to say you're sorry. Well, unfortunately, politics means never having to say you're sorry, and that's not good. That does not foster trust. And I think that's something else that goes here. But talking about fear, I think something else that happened, and it happened here in Israel, it doesn't affect everybody the same way. There's this old law in individual psychology called the Yerkes-Dodson law. That's really more than a century old. There are two American psychologists who quantified it, that if you want to improve people's performance in many things, if you increase the amount of stress you put on them, you get a performance. This is why we have, for example, exams in the university, because if we would tell the students, this is really important, but we know you're adults and you want to do a good job, so we're sure you're going to study this, and before we go on, that'll be the end of it. So likewise with the police and enforcing traffic regulations. So people have to be stressed to a certain degree in order to improve their performance. However, once you increase the stress beyond a certain point, performance is going to go down. People are going to get overwhelmed. People are going to get traumatized. From the fright or flight, you're going to move on to freeze, which is not good. And I think that because the point where that happens, where people start panicking, is different for different individuals. That point is not uniform for the whole population. What would only get some people to start complying with the party line, might get others to really panic. And I think, looking back, at least here in Israel, I think that the system made the mistake of scaring people too much and thereby bringing on two types of responses. One of which we've discussed here, and that is that people are so frightened that it's very hard to get them out of their holes once the bulk of the danger has gone down. But the other is that people just become reckless and careless, and because of the reasons that Dan mentioned, they say, well, nothing happened. These guys are just, putzing around with our minds, and who cares, and they move on.
You're both really stressing the issue of trust.
Yep.
And the information that was conveyed, maybe mixed messaging, initially being a little too lax, and then really scaring the population. How concerned are you both seeing that experts are talking about a second wave that could be worse? What, from a professional standpoint, what can be done? Because to me, it's very startling to hear you say this.
Yeah, well, it's tough. There's a very important issue here that we haven't raised before that I'd like to raise our attention to, and this is the following: we've only been talking about the COVID-19 crisis and casualties who die from the illness, the SARS virus. And I think once you do that, and I think we've all done it throughout the world, and you in the media really were conveying that, once you do that, you get into tunnel vision. You only look at what happens with COVID, and you only measure the casualties of the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, you miss the whole picture. And I think this is my impression, that, and this is on a worldwide level for reasons that could be understood, by focusing so much on what's happening with COVID and stopping COVID, I think we've done a bad job in addressing many other ailments in society, some of which are ongoing, for example, the economic situation, and some of which are really the direct consequences of the precautions and the steps we've been taking to protect us from Corona. And those are things like hospitals not functioning properly because they were silenced, and right now economy not recovering back. And I would say that if we don't only count the number of people who've died from Corona, we might see that casualties about other things have gone way up because of stress, because of undiagnosed malignancies, because of unbalanced diabetes in many people who did not show up to get their periodic tests or to renew the prescriptions. And I really hope that by the next wave, people are going to understand that the job of COVID specialists is to decrease and control pandemics. And that's what they're good at doing, and that's what they're being paid to do. But that's not the whole picture. And I really hope when the next wave hits, that the people who are in decision-making, who have the decision-making powers, would be brave enough and honest enough to say, this is terrible and the danger is not completely over. However, we're going to have to sustain some kind of damage, in order not to shut down the economy and bring all this collateral damage that we have.
Sure, which again comes back to trust. And we also saw it here in the States, people not going, people stopped taking, or making regular visits or going to the doctor for other medical conditions, and that had devastating results.
Yeah, and Dan is absolutely right that trust is key, because if what was permissible, what was really understandable, during the first step when we really didn't know what the pandemic might do, I think that fears of the Spanish influenza have been greatly exaggerated. But that's perfect hindsight. But now we do know how bad it can get. And so I think the second time around, if people say, look, we might have, we did overestimate it the first time around, we really didn't know. Now we think it's safe enough for you to do this and that, and we might sustain some casualties, but we really think that the costs outweigh the benefits. I think people will be more understanding.
Handling of it.
Right.
Jan,
So I think what you're asking is really about a very interesting paradoxical result. So you say we were in a lockdown, Israel in reducing the amount of people who got sick and passed away. But the experience of people is that this is not a big deal. So paradoxically, like if we were less successful and more people got sick and more people got passed away, then for the next wave, if there will be one, people would be more prepared to take personal costs, stay at home and so on. But paradoxically, and this is going back to the notion that we talked about experience, because the probability of getting sick in Israel and the probability of dying in Israel was so low, the experience of people is this is not such a bad deal. So I think we're going to enter, if there will be a next wave, with feeling of no, we know Corona. It was here before and nothing bad happened. Now, nothing bad happened partially because we were such in quarantine, but that's not how people are going to interpret it. People are going to interpret it, I've been in this for 3 months. It's really not a big deal. So there is a risk, again, like texting and driving and other things, that the strong measures in phase 1, the relative success, is teaching people the wrong lesson for wave 2. And that means that wave 2, I think, will be much harder to mobilize people in the right way. Because instead of having the Spanish flu in the back of our mind as the fear, we'll have these personal experience of 3 months when nothing bad happened, and now we'll have really hard time getting young professionals in Tel Aviv when they saw nothing negative.
And of course, without the trust, why should they listen once again to the government? We're very short on time, but I would love to hear some advice, some tips, to end on a positive note. We are expecting another wave. People are stressed. People are going to remain stressed. And this is something, modern society brings with it regardless, and COVID has made it go up the roof. Dan, let's start with you. Some tips. How can we maintain, sustain some form of good mental health and mental standing?
Okay, so I think this is going to be with us for a while, right? Second wave, no second wave. This is with us for a while. There's going to be a new normal. And if we talk about kind of one of the underlying things being stress and inability to control, I think we need to bring some control into our lives. One form of control is called shopping therapy. I'm not recommending it, but it's one way, right? And the reason shopping therapy is a sense of control is you take your credit card, you do something, you change the state of the world. Expensive, but that's one way. Another way to gain control is in small things, right? It's true that we can't get all of the control and we can't get everything back, but we need to get some control. So, for example, push-ups are very good. My hands are badly injured. I can't do push-ups, but stomach crunches. And the reason I recommend that rather than walking, for example, is that walking, you can't really see an improvement. But if you do push-ups or something like this, every few days you can feel that you're doing one more, or if you do meditation. So take something that you could see visible improvement happening on a relatively quick basis and do that. And then Yoram mentioned our social nature. We're social creatures. What is so unique and amazing about us is that we have the capacity to care about the people. We have the capacity for collective action, for altruism, and so on. I think this period of Zoom meetings is taking away some of that. And I think we need to figure out how do we maintain social relationship, how do we do things for other people. I'll just tell you that for me, most of the day I sit in front of this laptop in meetings. When I want to have a social meeting, I do it on my iPhone or an iPad. I move to a different corner in the house and I do it slightly different. I'm basically kind of using signals to myself that says, this is not work. Now, it's this corner of the table that is social time, this corner, slightly different device, but we need to realize that social relationship fuel us and give us hope and give us a sense of connection. They give us resilience.
Yeah, they build.
Yoram, how do we get over this this physical divide to create that social feeling. And is that really what we need most during a time like this?
Absolutely, we do. That's one other thing with which I agree with Dan. I think that we're totally dependent on our social networks, and I think sustaining them, maintaining them, keeping them alive, keeping the flow of good vibes and even bad vibes moving back and forth, I think that's absolutely essential. And I think that's been one of the upsides of this happening now. You know, during the Spanish flu, people could only send letters to each other that would arrive 3 weeks later. So I think from that perspective, we're in a much better place. And frankly, I've been sitting here and I've been agreeing with everything that Dan said. So I'm glad that there's one single thing that we don't completely agree on. I do agree. I think it's absolutely essential to engage in physical activity. And I think that's because the pandemic has enforced us passivity. And passivity is the root of all evil. People get traumatized. We know that the chances of soldiers to sustain PTSD are directly and strongly proportional to the degree to which they feel helpless to change the situation around them. And I think that key to that, and because experiencing is much more important than what you know cognitively, I think that not being locked down in one place is so important. So my advice would be, you know, during the next round, get out of the house. You know, people don't get the virus just because it's flowing in the wind. People get the virus from being close to other people. So things that you can do, physical activity that you can do out there, you know, go walking, go running, keeps you on your feet. And we need to move. And I think that in many countries, in Israel too, the authorities realized that and made the appropriate exceptions in the scare tactics. They said, well, if you're going to do exercise, you know, do that. And I think that's one thing that's extremely important. And it's also important because sitting down at home makes us gain weight. The average Israeli gained 2 kilograms during this 4 pounds. During
we
this
know.
time. You got to shed them. So I would say from earlier on to keep people moving. It's incredibly important. It's also an antidepressant. You know, 35 minutes of intense aerobic exercise is equivalent to taking an SSRI in terms of prevention and treatment of depression. So I would stress that, and I would stress, as Dan said, the social relationships. It's the end all be all. You know.
So to conclude, we have to not be passive. Physical activity, shopping. I definitely wrote that. I know I wrote that down. Shopping makes you feel better because it gives you control. I'm okay with that. And social interaction, and to try to find a divide between your work life and your social life, even when we can't actually see each other in person. Gentlemen, this has been such a pleasure, and I have so many more questions, but we're out of time. Thank you so much. Really such a treat.
Thank you very much.
You too. And hang in there.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course.
Thank you, everyone. Before we jump into our next session, I'd like to remind everyone once again to download our cutting-edge digital platform, the IAC Summits app. Download it now to get the full eSummit experience and join exclusive sessions to get extra content. Available only on the app. We've created a short walkthrough tutorial that will easily explain how to use it so that you can benefit from all the interactive features we've put in place for you. Take a look.
Thank you for attending the New Tomorrow. To join the current live session, just click on the Live Watch Now button right from the homepage. You will be able to watch the session and also chat with other attendees, direct questions to the speakers, and answer polls. Click on the session to display its details, register, and explore speakers' information. All the sessions that you have been registered to will be shown under My Event. You will be able to network with all attendees of your choice by sending them connection requests. If the person accepts your connection request, you'll have access to their contact details, and they will have access to yours. You can also schedule video meetings with attendees. Head to the discussions section to engage in conversation with speakers and other attendees.
Hey, Al.
Hi.
Mr. Waldman has been the